Lamed Beis, 32b. So we talked yesterday a little bit about this idea that the Mezuzah, has to be written with all of its particular details. The Torah uses the word ksiva, writing, with respect to Mezuzah, and the same word writing appears with respect to a divorce paper and with respect to the writing of the Torah itself. And in both of those occasions, the Torah uses the word sefer, a book. So in some way, the Mezuzah needs to follow the structure of a book. In what way? And the way Rashi put it, it's in two ways specifically. Number one, it has shirtut, it has scoring, making sure that the lines are perfectly straight. That's the way one would publish a book. And likewise, the grammar has to be 100% correct in that letters that, because their vowels could in theory be removed, those should be there. And likewise in the Mezuzah, actually, I didn't mention this yesterday, but in the Mezuzah there's, I think one of the times in the Torah when it says Mezuzah, Mezuzahs, which ordinarily is spelled Mem, Zayin, Vav, Zayin, Saf. It's usually how it's spelled, with a Vav between the two Zayins. At one of the times, actually, the Vav is not supposed to be there. So it's both. When you're writing a letter, you might just write fast, and you're not particular which time is supposed to be a Vav, which one is not supposed to be a Vav. And maybe when the Vav is not supposed to be there, you'll have it there. And when the Vav is supposed to be there, you'll skip it. But the point being, because the Torah compares it to writing a book, it's to be particularly written. And now we get to the particular placement of the Mezuzah, and how, as what will emerge is, in the same way one needs to make sure, and that's why I prefaced it with this, that the Mezuzah needs to be written properly, and if not, we all understand that Mezuzah is invalid. So likewise when it comes to placement, a Mezuzah placed in the wrong place is, from a halachic perspective, as if the Mezuzah is not there. So in the same way one needs to be careful and be sure that Mezuzah is written by someone competent and by someone trustworthy. Likewise, when it comes to Mezuzah placement, one should know where they're putting it and consult with one who might be able to help you if the question should arise. So, sorry?
Sofer, safer.
Either a sofer or a rabbi, anybody? But what will emerge from the Gemara is, we're not doing the Shulchan Aruch, we're doing the Gemara, so I don't know that we'll get all the actual halach of every single detail, but at least you'll know when to ask a question. That's at least a good enough objective, to know when to ask. That's what I was taught when we learned our smicha. We learned the primary of our smicha was kashrus. We did Shabbos and other things as well, but the primary was kashrus, yerda, as they call it. And we were told before we started that although when you learn smicha, you'll learn all the halachas, and in theory, you'll know how to answer questions, but it's possible that with time, you won't remember everything, especially if your job doesn't require you to stay fresh on the halachas, meaning you're not going to rabbinics, you're going to work. But one thing you will have gained from this year of studying the halacha is you'll know when to ask a question. And you'll know how to ask a question. It's an important thing, because you don't know if there's an issue, you don't ask. You just assume it's all fine. But just having a cursory knowledge of the laws gives you an idea of when to ask a question. So likewise here, although we're not going to go to every single halacha, how every single mezuzah should be placed in every door, but at least you'll know when to ask and you'll know what the considerations are. So let's begin. It's the first line that gets wide on the bottom of Lamed Beis, 32b. It's the second word. First word is Mesefer, and the second word is, talking about mispronunciations, right? And the second word is V'amar. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Shmuel. Tala b'makal, if he hung the mezuzah on a stick, psula, it is invalid. My time, what's the reason? B'sharecha be'inan. The verse says to place the mezuzah on the doorpost of your gates. This is not on your gate. This is on a stick. So it would seem that the person took a pole, stuck it into the ground, and hung the mezuzah at the top of it. Or took a peg, stuck it into the doorpost, and then hung the mezuzah on that. Either way, the mezuzah is not on the doorpost itself, it's hanging on some stick. And the verse says that it's to be written on the doorpost of your gate, and this is not on the gate, this is on a stick, and therefore it's invalid. Tanya Namahachi, we have a Mishnaic age text that backs us up because the statement is made of Yehuda, the name of Shmuel, of Yehuda and Shmuel. Well, Shmuel, they're the early generation of the Meraim, not the first, but earlier in the generation of the Gemara sages. But nonetheless, the Gemara is now citing to a Mishnaic text to back it up. And it says as follows: Talab Makal, if you put it on a stick, Mezuzah, you put the Mezuzah on a stick. Or you put it behind the door. Sakana, it is, it's dangerous. Ve'ein ba mitzvah, and there is no mitzvah done. So, what does this mean? That it's a danger? First of all, behind the door, as Rashi tells us, behind the door means on the wall, past the door. It could be on either side, in the front or the back. We'll actually learn about the front soon, but it's not inside the doorpost, not inside the frame. It's on the wall behind the door.
I've seen that.
I've seen people make that mistake as well.
Right on the wall.
On the wall, as opposed to on the doorpost. It's invalid.
Yeah.
It's invalid. And what's sakana? What's the danger? So let's see. There's two different versions of what the danger is. We'll look at both of them. We'll see Rashi and then we'll see Tosfos. So let's see Rashi. So Rashi is on the left here, the left column, and it's towards the top. Middle, you see the bold word sakana. It's the last word on the line. In the Rashi column, it's the column on the left. But halfway up Rashi, if you go a little farther back up, you'll see where it says sakana. The last word on the line is sakana in bold. Yeah. Sakana, what's sakana? Minamazikim, from those that will harm you. Whether this means physical harm, from physical burglars or whatnot. It's likely, but more likely that Rashi means the spiritual mazikim, the spiritual negative forces. Because it's lacking, she'ein habayis mishtamer, because the home is lacking spiritual security. Until it is established b'tzuras ha'pesach kolchasa, in the pathway, in the doorway, as it's supposed to be halachically speaking. So Rashi is telling us like this. We know that the mezuzah, of course, is God's protection of the home. The mezuzah serves two purposes. The first is, it's our declaration that we dedicate this home to Hashem by putting in the entrance the mezuzah. And then from Hashem's, so that's from us to Hashem, and if Hashem's response to us, the mezuzah is the channel through which Hashem's protection is provided to the home. And Rabbi used to say, I think it's even, I think it has earlier sources, if I'm not mistaken, that it doesn't just protect the home, but it protects those who live in the home, even when they're not in the home. Even when they're not in the home, it protects them. I know Rabbi used to cite this. I'm not sure if there's an earlier source to this. I don't know, but I know Rabbi used to cite this idea. Yeah?
Isn't this because you're going in and out? You're protected inside and outside.
The primary reason is considering Hashem's mitzvah. The person does what Hashem wants, Hashem provides in kind. And specifically, the mezuzah is protection. And we know that on mezuzah on the outside it has the letters Shin Daled Yud, which is one of the names of Hashem. And Shin Daled Yud is an acronym. Shin stands for Shomer, the guardian. Daled, Dalsos, the doors. Yisrael, the Jewish people. Shomer Dalsos Yisrael. Dalsos Yisrael. Hashem is the protector of the doors of Israel. So Rashi is telling us, if the mezuzah is not placed where it's supposed to, then it's as good as it's not there at all. So it lacks the protection, lacks the spiritual protection, and therefore the person is subject to, God forbid, all kinds of dangers. It's not, even in its literal sense, it's not a punishment. A person doesn't have a mezuzah, he's punished with this. No. If you're lacking a lock on your door, it's not a punishment that someone broke into your house. It's the natural result. So the natural spiritual result of an invalid mezuzah, whether invalid because the mezuzah itself is invalid, or the mezuzah is placed in a place that makes it, renders it invalid, the natural result is spiritual insecurity.
It's almost like the Pesach, the blood on the lintel.
So yeah, it's actually one of the original origins of the mitzvah is that. That's correct. Yeah, indeed. And obviously, our spiritual life is in direct alignment with our physical life, and therefore, for lacking spiritual security, God forbid, it lacks in physical security as well. This is true of mezuzahs and tefillin especially, but mezuzahs especially, which is why it's common Jewish practice when a Jew is under some duress, some stress, something's going on, checks his tefillin mezuzahs to make sure that everything is the way it should be, because the stories that of people who have been in difficult situation and have looked up at the mezuzahs and found something wrong with either the placement or the writing or something like that is too numerous to discount as chance. just on an empirical basis, the amount of stories, the amount of first-hand testimony to the amount of time people have gone through some difficult situation and found a infraction here in the mezuzah, or a fraction here in the placement, or a fraction here in the tefillin, is too much to just discount. So this is kind of what Rashi is talking about. If the mezuzah is misplaced, it's lacking protection. But Tosfos offers another explanation. I don't think he's disagreeing with Rashi's premise. He's just disagreeing with Rashi's application of the premise to this Gemara. That's so it would seem to me, as I'll point out as we read from Tosfos. So Tosfos is the last three lines on the margin that's on the right, which extends to the bottom. So the last three lines all the way at the bottom of the page. Sakana, the bold word sakana, the ein by mitzvah. The Gemara declared that if someone puts a mezuzah on a stick, it's not placed properly, it's both dangerous and lacks the mitzvah. And as we just explained, that Rashi is telling us that the reason why it's a danger is because it lacks a mitzvah. It's like explanation. Sakana, it's dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because ein by mitzvah, there's no mitzvah, and lacking the protection. So Pirish B'Kuntris, Tosfos says, the Kuntris, the pamphlet explained, I think I mentioned here before, that Rashi was referred to as the pamphlet, because it seemed that his publications were published alongside the Gemara and individual handouts. Or maybe they came out in installments, and as they came out in installments, they also came out in pamphlets. I don't know why, but for some reason Rashi was referred to as the Kuntris, the pamphlet. So Tosfos says, Pirish B'Kuntris, Rashi said in the pamphlet, Kiv and Dasar Shlei Kol Chasa, because the mezuzah is placed not in accordance to halacha, Ein Abayis Mishtamer, the home is not protected min hamazikin from those that would damage him. It's lacking spiritual protection. So says Tosfos, so Kasha Rabbi Tam. Rabbi Tam finds this difficult as an explanation for our Gemara. Rabbi Tam is sage's name is Rabbi Yaakov, and he's actually Rashi's grandson, one of Rashi's grandsons who appear in the Tosfos. And Rabbi Tam says the imkain, for if Rashi's interpretation was right in our Gemara, that when the Gemara says that it's dangerous, the reason it's dangerous is because one's lacking spiritual protection because the mitzvah is not fulfilled in its entirety. The Gemara should have worded it this way. Quote, but the one who does it not in accordance to halacha. In other words, Tosfos' problem with Rashi is not the premise that mezuzah that's lacking halacha is lacking protection. That he's okay with. His problem is the application here. That if that's what the Gemara meant over here, then it should have worded it as such. The Gemara over here, it says that if you hung it up on a stick, there's no mitzvah and it's dangerous. The Gemara should have said, if there's no mitzvah, then it's dangerous. It should have just made a blatant. In other words, if you're trying to tell me that when there's a danger, when the mitzvah isn't done right, there's a spiritual danger, then say so. Why are you picking out this one law that if it's hanging on a stick, it's dangerous? You should just say, anytime you make the mezuzah not in accordance with Jewish law, there's a danger.
Right, not just for the stick.
Not just the stick. Right? In other words, there's how many Mishnahs that talk about mezuzahs that are invalid, and how many of them conclude with saying it's dangerous? Most of them don't. And here, when it comes to the stick, the Mishnah lists and says it's dangerous. So Tosfos is not disagreeing with the premise of Rashi, he's disagreeing with the application to this particular text. So it would seem to my reading of Tosfos. Because he doesn't say that he has a question on the premise, he just says, have a remember what the Gemara should have worded if this is what it meant.
Is he clarifying it?
So he's going to say,
broadening it rather than disputing it? He's clarifying what
he's just going to give another
he's just
going to give another explanation of what the Gemara meant here, as we'll see. And therefore it seems to Rabbi Tam, the Tala B'Maka, that when someone puts the mezuzah on a stick, Neikif Baroisha, he literally can bump his head. it's hanging in the doorway, so he's going to bump his head. And there's the danger. Because he doesn't notice it, doesn't see it. Likewise, likewise, if someone puts the mezuzah behind the door, because the Gemara talks about two things here that are dangerous. If you put it on a stick or if you put it behind the door on the wall. So likewise, if it's put it on the door, it'll end up being popping out of the wall. It'll bank his head there. And then he makes a reference to a different Gemara elsewhere, which is not important to us. The point Tosfos is saying is like this. The Mishnah here says the sakana, he's saying that the sakana means on a very physical level. The mezuzah is not placed properly on the door, and it's bumped, and you bump into it. And therefore, when Tosfos is reading, the Gemara is saying two things. Number one, it's dangerous, just because you're putting it in a place that the person is likely to walk into. And number two, there's no mitzvah. Now, he might agree with Rashi that when there's no mitzvah, it's lacking protection. Because that's a very logical thing. If the mitzvah offers protection, then it only offers protection when the mitzvah is done. If there's no mitzvah, then there's no protection. But it's just that this is my reading at least, the Tosfos is just saying that when Rashi said the word sakana, that's not what the Gemara meant, but not that the premise is wrong. So it would seem to me at least.
But sure, the objection is that Gemara should have mentioned there's no mitzvah, just only mentioned the word sakana. So it seems that's what Tosfos wants to say. It's not so much the mitzvah is missing.
There's two things.
Physical danger. Yeah.
Well, it's two things. Number one, it's sakana, it's danger, physical danger. Number two, there's no mitzvah.
Yeah, but
Sakana
the
means-
Gemara says both.
The Gemara didn't mention there's no. That's what's the Tosfos objection. It didn't mention there's no mitzvah. We know
It does say there's no mitzvah. It says the ain but mitzvah.
It's in English.
Oh, yeah.
The Gemara says mitzvah. What Tosfos is saying is, it should have said,
First.
it shouldn't have said
Right.
one particular law. It just said anything that's not done according to halacha is a danger. If that's what he's worried about the wording. He's not worried about the premise, I think.
Should have said first there's no mitzvah and then sakana.
It doesn't mention that, but it's also a good point.
Yeah,
At any rate, I just want to conclude with this. Mitzvah Shem, tomorrow we'll get to more issues of placement in Mezuzah, but at least we have already, right from the beginning, from Rashi at least, who tells us that when we launch now into the set of halachas that talk about the placement in Mezuzah, you should be aware that misplacing it is like it's not there at all. And if it's not there at all, then it lacks, first of all, one doesn't fulfill the mitzvah, Pashat, Hashem asked him to do something, and it's not being done. But additionally, the promises of Hashem's protection that comes with that mitzvah could God forbid, be lacking should the mitzvah not be done right, and not in a way of punishment, but if Hashem's protection is lacking, one is subject to what the world has to offer. And not always is that so certainly pleasant.
Is the protection limited to the confines of the structure, or could it expand outwardly to outside?
So that's what I think I mentioned. The Rebbe says this a number of times, that the Mezuzah offers protection to the home and to those who live in it, even when they're not in the home.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it has an earlier source. For some reason it rings a bell that it does, but I know that the Rebbe used to say this. I'll look for it.
Sages in general had that view, not only the Rabbi.
Yeah, I know what I'm saying. I remember reading it from the Rebbe, so I'm not sure if it comes from earlier sources. I'm pretty sure it does, but I just don't want to say so because I just remember from reading the Rebbe. I'll have a double check and I'll let you know.
Very nice.
All right, have a wonderful day, everybody.
Good day.